Welcome to Promote Profit Publish. I can't even talk today. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and we have a really great guest today. I know I always say that, but I really try to cultivate some fabulous people for you guys to listen to. But before we get started, I want to invite you to go over and take our Promote Profit Publish quiz. You can find that at promoteprofitpublishquiz.com. Also, if you are over on YouTube, check us out. Go and follow us over on Superbrand Publishing. And you're listening to the show, please give us 5 stars and give us a review. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. So today's guest is Michelle Thompson, and she owns a company called Designed for Destiny. And she's an author who spent 15 years in corporate America working for Fortune 100 companies. And in June 2009, she began working full-time in her own consulting firm called Designed for Destiny, LLC. And she also has a 501c3 nonprofit, For One Inc., sharing with clients about healthy relationships on all sides of life. And it's going to be really cool because she got to speak in a really cool place in front of a huge audience. So we're going to talk about that as well. She's also the author of Table for One, Please, Table for One, Thanks, and Table for One, Wholeness. And she has an upcoming book named after her podcast called You Belong, which I was just a guest on. So welcome, Michelle. It's great to have you.
Thank you. And thank you for that wonderful intro.
Well, thank you. It was easy. You wrote a great intro. So, tell us about how did you get to where you are today? What was your journey?
Yeah, it's a really interesting and kind of unique story. I think a lot of us entrepreneurs have been workaholics at one time in our life, right? And we kind of realize if I'm going to be a workaholic, I'm not going to do it for someone else's company. I think I'm going to do it for mine. And my journey really got jump started back in early 2000s, actually. I had a close friend of mine pass away who was battling lupus and scleroderma. And I remember like a year when she was first diagnosed, and I didn't really understand lupus and scleroderma and how terminal it could be for some people while others seem to battle and survive on. But I remember her always cautioning me with all the work. I was working at 10 o'clock and midnight in advertising in Chicago. And then we would go out to lunch in the gold, in the one district of town, which was really high end, where I ran into people like Whitney Houston at the same spa with me, different things like that. And she goes, "When's the last time you really shopped over here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can't afford that." And she's like, "Why don't you just drop a whole paycheck in the Gold Coast and just shop there one day?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so risky. I would never do anything like that." And little did I know when we sat there and planned, okay, one day we're going to do that. We're going to go on payday and we're going to go to the Gold Coast and we're going to do it. And almost a year later, my friend was gone.
Oh,
And so that really stuck out to me that we always put off tomorrow, but what are we supposed to do? So I left her funeral like really questioning God and like, what am I supposed to do in life? And I went home and wrote a whole book the day after her funeral.
oh my
It was
gosh.
like I had a journals and ideas and thoughts of things, but I had never put them together. So I felt accomplished, like, life is not for anything. So I wrote this book and I set it on a shelf for 10 years. Flash forward 2009, I'm the spokesperson for Procter and Gamble for Bounty paper towels in the African American community, traveling with a celebrity, talking about the importance of family and how Bounty paper towels is a part of that family time. And I got off stage at my first speaking engagement. And I remember thinking, like, wow, this is connected to, I wrote this book and I didn't know what to do with it. And so it just kind of jump started. It all just came together for me right there. And so that was the time. And so I published the book in 2009 that I'd written almost 10 years earlier. So that's how I got started.
That is so cool. Isn't it funny how when we look, because I think about this from my advertising days too, when I look at where I hopscotched from one place to another, at the time, it made 0 sense. And
right.
then, you know, there's that time where it comes together and you think, oh my, I get it now. Like that's why I had all of those things happen. So it's wonderful that you kind of explained what I've known for a while that happened with my, you know, my journey on there. So how did that lead you to speaking at one of the biggest congregations in the world?
Oh man. So go back to that moment I left the stage. I was speaking actually in DC at the Congressional Black Caucus, huge audience. And my PR person for the job had written me a speech. But we have so many other duties when you work in brand management. It was like memorizing a speech for a 20-minute speech was not high priority for me. So I was on the flight trying to do it. And all of a sudden I realized they had even written my childhood memory for me. And I'm like, wait, no, this isn't me. And so I remember about to get on the stage and I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't memorize it. I had no time. I'm going to go from my heart and my gut on this. And when I got finished speaking, I had a standing ovation. And my PR guy looks at me and goes, I'm not writing another speech on this tour. You got it. And so from there on, they let me do my own thing and just made sure I hit my key message points.
Right.
And I was fine. And so when I felt really like this is time for me to launch my book and go off, and people were like, well, you don't sell books without speaking. I'm like, oh, I'm so shy. But I ended up with this role at work where I had to. And so I was like, well, what do I do next? And I put my agency hat back on. And so when I was in advertising, you know, you run a business of multi-million dollars and you have people pitching you all the time. And I said, who are the people I went for? And I thought about, the people who cared about me and built a relationship and knew what I needed. And so I looked to my friends who at the time, unfortunately, is 2009, another industry lull in the economy, 2009, 2010. And I went to my friend who was my ad sales rep for my first job in advertising. He was laid off at the time or not working. I said, hey, could you be my pitch guy? I got a book coming out and I think this is my target audience. And I had like ugly, rough copies of my book made, but it was just enough to whet people's appetite that Table for One Please is coming out. And I sent them to every mega church with a cover note. And then I had my pitch guy follow up and call people. And so I'm at work, still working full time, and he goes, the singles pastor at Lakewood is pretty interested. He wants to talk to you. Can I give him your home number? And I'm like, yeah. And so I give him my home number, and I don't know what it was that particular day. I was supposed to go to work, and this was back when we had home numbers, 2019. and and I said, you know, I don't feel well, but it's not a sick day. It's like I feel like I shouldn't be at work today. Have you ever had that feeling like it's not like I'm sick, but it is a sick day? So I hate to say it on air, but I called in. I said I cannot work today, and I didn't let them ask what was going on because I didn't want to lie. But I was just like, I can't come to work. So I spent the whole day cleaning my house, revising my book, and I get a phone call, and it was the singles pastor at Lakewood. And we talked for 2 hours. And I just shared with him my heart, why I wrote Table for One Please, talked about my friend passing away, which, by the way, she passed away in the middle of a divorce. And so it made me even more about the heart issues and just how people need to be healthy and whole, regardless of their relationship status. And so we had a long conversation. And at the end of it, he shocked me. He said, when you're ready, let me know. You come speak to our singles. And I'm like, huh? And I'm like, that was a weird invite. It was when you're ready. And so this was probably May 2009. And so we had a call in November. I called him back and I said, I think I'm ready. And we went back and put together an agreement and all that. Next, you know, I was flying to Houston for 2 nights to speak to their singles audiences, and they have over 500, 800 people each night, even just for that smaller set of singles. So they had the first night for singles 25 to 34 or so, and the next night was singles 40 plus. And my team came together. I mean, I ended up having a team of a couple laid off friends, but we got gift packages together, had t-shirts with my books on name on it, just everything for this big Valentine's Day launch in February 2010. And it was just amazing because I remember speaking, and the first night, I think I exceeded expectations. Like, people were calling on the phone and people were coming back the second night. And so I made a mistake and heard what people said about me.
Uh-huh.
And that made me nervous
Ah.
because I was in the bathroom and I heard these girls talking. Dee Michelle is great. Her stories are awesome. I just was on the floor in tears. Oh my God. I called everybody and told them they better come the next night. And I'm like, oh my God. And
Ah, that's funny.
so when I started speaking the second night, I saw the singles pastor kind of look at me because he could tell it wasn't the same person. I was like super nervous and I started off kind of shaky. And then all of a sudden I looked around. I was like, stop worrying about what people say. You know, you're not here for people. And I remember actually my older brother told me, he said, I know it's a lot of people and I know you're like, am I going to reach people? He said, but remember, sometimes in life, you're only there for that one person.
Mhm.
So start thinking about your message as if it's going to help one person and forget about the whole crowd. And I remembered my brother's encouragement to me. And by that third line, I was back in and I saw the singles pastor like, okay, okay, that's who we pay for.
Well, explain too, because you said that about that one person. There was that one person in the crowd that came up to you afterwards too, right?
Yeah, and it was. It's so funny. My brother had that encouragement to me because after I spoke, there was a part where I went off script and I started telling someone as if it was one person, do not cancel the date. Cancel the date. Don't go backwards. You are meant to go forward. And so after the presentation, I was signing books, and this lady comes up to me and says, I'm the one. I'm like, what? And she's like, I'm the one that made you go off script. I had a date with my ex husband for tomorrow night for Valentine's Day. And after your encouragement, I'm canceling it. I canceled it already. I'm texting. I was like, wow. And so we never know those little moments that, yeah, it was for someone to hear that. So it's great.
That's very cool. So how does this all relate to what you do today?
Oh, it's great. Great question, because I myself challenged myself after writing this book was all about healthy relationships. And now I find myself doing culture work and consulting and talking about belonging. And all of a sudden it hit me one day, like, it's the same thing. People at work got to learn how to love each other, just like people at home got to learn how to love each other. And so you're really talking about love in the workplace, you know, you're really talking about building a culture of healthy relationships. And so what I realized, it even tied back to um, my life mission statement. I wrote a mission statement for my life in my early 20s and didn't know what to do with it. But it said, my mission is to heal the brokenhearted through writing, teaching, and speaking. And I'm so grateful that today I live that out through consulting leaders and coaching them on how to empower their employees. And I do that through my workshops with singles and couples and talking about healthy relationships. And I'm like, wow, I'm living it out. And somebody asked me, well, who's the brokenhearted? And I said, if we're all honest, we're all broken. In some way, all of us have had that brokenheartedness about some issue in life. Either it's a coworker who gets on your nerves that you don't want to work with anymore, or it's that spouse that you're like, I cannot go home to them tonight. And so we're all dealing with a manner of how can I communicate? How can I be more thinking about what I bring to the table and less about what are they bringing to the table? How can I build this culture of love? And so I even have this tagline now in my nonprofit Table for One Inc., where I say, this is how to build healthy relationships at home, at work, and at play. That's what we're really talking about. That's all I'm doing, whether I'm consulting a corporation or I'm working in a workshop one to one with people.
That's so cool. Tell us more about your nonprofit.
Table for One Inc. was founded around 2011, actually, while I lived in Denver, where I was contracted to do speaking engagements for women's ministry for about 7 months, which was great, and talk to them about healthy relationships. And at the time, people were such a fan of it. My friend worked at a TV network out there, Colors Multicultural TV. My book, Table for One Please, was turned into a TV show for a period of time.
Oh,
And
wow.
so through that, we were talking about, you know what? This should be a nonprofit to really help people and even more people that have been, I don't want to use the word at risk. I would say more people just haven't had the exposure or the opportunities that maybe other audiences have. And so while I lived in Denver, the nonprofit launched by doing my book as a play and inviting women from domestic violence shelters to come to the play. And I teamed up with a bridal shop locally to work with youth. And I did a workshop leading up to the play with at risk youth, so to speak, and gave them bridal gown, like bridesmaid dresses and things to wear to the play gala. So we did a dinner play gala, and it was absolutely phenomenal because we built a bridge between different communities. So I always say table for one. What I'm realizing as I walk out the mission of healthy relationships is not just about, like I said, man and woman or relationships on that, but even between cultures. Because that play, we had my main character, my book Table for One Please, her name is Brinley, which means virtuous princess. But she's struggling to live up with the virtue part of her name, if you know what I mean. So she
Uh-huh.
goes through some different situations, as they might say, some situations. And I had five or no, four different actresses of all different cultures play that same character at different places and phases of life in monologue so people could see that, wow, I'm her, she's me. I struggle with that too. And it was a great response. And the domestic violence shelter women coming up to the altar at the end and just wanting to be healed from different relationships, it was pretty amazing. Since that time, we've taken it and worked specifically with youth who are in foster care.
Hmm.
And we've done a project which we call You Are Loved, where if you're familiar with the five love languages
Yeah.
by Gary Chapman, we take the five love languages and turn them into activity boosts for the youth. Because a lot of times, foster youth, unfortunately, I'm doing workshops on abstinence for them because while they're in the foster care system, they'll hook up with someone else in foster care out of looking for love, and then you have a baby. And so, what I'm trying to teach them is there's other healthier ways to have love. And so, the five love languages gives Table for One the opportunity to do that. And so for the past few years, we'll do around Christmas time or other Valentine's Day, we'll do a You Are Love project to really help those youth who are stuck in foster care to understand what real love can look like in healthy ways.
Oh, that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your podcast, the You Belong podcast.
You belong. I love this new podcast because all my guests, like yourself, when you come on, it just challenges me to go back and think about everyone struggles with belonging on
Mhm.
some issue. And like I said, it goes beyond just like the oneness and healthy relationship. It goes beyond race. It goes beyond, oh, your social status. And in my tagline in You Belong, it says how to fit in, even when you don't. Like, forget what it looks like in the boardroom, ladies, where you're like, oh, I'm the only one here that's female. Or forget what it looks like when, you know what, I just did the last check on the different people who are coming to the company offsite and everyone's bringing their families, and maybe you're an empty nester now. Or maybe there's so many different things and we have in society that are good things, but for people who haven't experienced it yet or may not, that it turns into a bad thing, or people feeling like, oh, I don't belong, or I don't have this yet, or oh, I need to run and put this, as I call it, you want this swipe to have this in your title. And so my tagline in You Belong, I say, remove that title, remove that label, remove that social media status, and put on your kingdom status by knowing you belong. You belong because you're a child of God. You belong because you were created to be Juliet. I was created to be myself. So that makes you belong. And the world needs you. It needs the best version of you. So just celebrate that and stop trying to fit in and just know that you belong.
I gave up trying to fit in a long time ago. That's so funny. So where can we find you and your podcast as well? If they want to contact you and find out more about your books and what you do, and also where they can listen to you.
Well, always first I say go to iTunes and check out the latest episode of You Belong this week. Next week will be Juliet, your favorite there. Um, Also, I would encourage you to go to Instagram and look at author D. Michelle, and that's Michelle with two L's. And so you can go to Instagram and find me there. Then you can also check me out on Twitter at Know You Belong, and that's KNOWYOU Belong. So Know You Belong on Twitter, Author D. Michelle on Instagram and iTunes, as well as Podbean and a lot of other podcast platforms. You can find the You Belong podcast.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Oh, thank you for having me on. This was great.